Regularly scheduled programming will not be seen, so that we may bring you the following special presentation from WVEC-TV.
It's September 19th. The year is 1953. The time is 1:30. An average Saturday afternoon for most folks in Hampton, in Newport News, in Norfolk, in the small oceanfront community of Virginia Beach. But for some, there's a feeling of excitement and anticipation. This is the day that a new television station will go on the air for the first time, bringing the promise of entertainment, news, and community service to Hampton Roads.
WVEC-TV, Hampton.
Television is ready for you.
He's a waste of time.
Oh, that's me! Boys and girls, being Tuesday, I think it's time for a bundled wave or two, and here we go with a wave and a double one going out to...
The Project 60 unit of WVEC-TV presents The History of Hampton.
Reports tonight from Jim Kincaid on the danger of slag.
That's 13 years in a row.
Tonight, we'll take a nostalgic look at 40 years. 40 years during which WVEC-TV has brought quality television programs to the airwaves.
On we go with Tic-Tac-Toe. Let's roll the categories to new positions, please. There they are, 2 X's, 1 O on the board. It's your turn. Michael O'Rourke, where would you like to place the next X?
In 1953, people all over the United States were being dazzled by the modern phenomenon, television. They'd been listening to the radio for years, but now there were pictures with the sound, beamed right into the living room. Brand names like Dumont, Philco, and Motorola became household words. With the flip of a switch, one could see and hear the biggest stars, the funniest comedians, the best musicians.
And here he is, the one, the only.
If you lived in Hampton Roads, Virginia, there was only one TV station to watch and only a limited number of programs. That's when Thomas P. Chisman, owner of Hampton radio station WVEC-AM, decided it was time for a second TV station to go on the air. The Federal Communications Commission had recently issued regulations that opened up 70 new channels for television broadcasting. Chisman filed an application for a license to broadcast on one of these channels. Harold Brower, WVEC Radio's commercial manager, helped get the TV business started.
We established offices in the Selden Arcade in Norfolk, and later established some studios on 21st Street in Norfolk, with our main studios in Hampton.
After raising money from a group of local businessmen, Chisman's company was granted a license to operate on ultra-high frequency, UHF, Channel 15. But getting on the air wasn't easy. Operations manager Lawrence Duff Cleaver remembers.
The first time we put up the TV tower in Hampton at 1930 East Pembroke Avenue, a boom broke on it when we got it about 350 feet in the air, and the tower came down, and it also tore down our radio tower.
The TV sets were not equipped to receive UHF. In order to get our signal, people had to buy converters, a little box that they put on top of their sets. We found out that only 28,000, as of the day we went on the air, could actually see our picture.
The first broadcast on WVEC television, Channel 15, featured popular NBC star Skitch Henderson, his wife, actress Faye Emerson, herself a well-known television personality, and Margaret Truman, the daughter of former President Harry Truman. Channel 15 carried programs from the National Broadcasting Company, NBC. The primetime lineup on September 19th, 1953, included some of the most popular shows of the day, available to the Hampton Roads audience for the first time. At 8:30, viewers tuned in to Ted Mack's Original Amateur Hour.
The first evaporated milk. The first choice of good cooks and pet non-fat dry milk. The new non-fat dry milk with a delicious fresh milk flavor. Two great products bring you Ted Mack, and the original Amateur Hour.
And right after Ted Mack came Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca starring in Your Show of Shows, a program beginning its 5th season on television.
This is Your Show of Shows, and here I am again, your hostess for this evening, Marcia Hunt. As every woman knows, there are a million ways to get a man. There are also a good many ways to scare a man off. This young girl, in a shooting gallery at a carnival, discovers that you can't shoot your way into romance. Miss Imogene Coca finds you can't get a man with a gun.
Nothing. I'm quick on the trigger with targets not much bigger than a pinpoint. I'm number one. Like a cat with a gat. But my score with the feller is way down in the cellar. Oh, you can't get a man with a gun. He's shot a gal with a gun. When I'm with the pistol, I sparkle like a crystal. Oh, I shine like the morning sun. The doll of a gun, Mom. But a lose on the luster when with the Bronco Buster. Oh, you can't get a man with a gun. No fun with a gun. 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 Oh, you can't get a man with a gun. No, not one. If I went to battle with someone's herd of cattle, you'd have stakes when the job was done. On the hook and hook. But if I shot the herder, they'd holler bloody murder. And you can't get a hug from a mug with a slug. Oh, you can't get a man with a gun. Oh, brave Mary, you see a lion glaring when she's out with her ramming gun. But a look from the mister will raise a fever blister. Oh, you can't get a man with a... He's got 45, hardly man to sound like. Gals with umbrellas are always out with fellas in the rain or the blazing sun. Our colored stars, but a man never trifles with girls who carry rifles. Oh, you can't get a man with a... There must be one guy who isn't gun shy. Shy with the gun. Oh, you can't get a man with a gun. It isn't done. A young man who mentions his honorable intentions brings a ring to the girl he won. The girl he won, but the ring grabbed to ring her, won't fit a trigger finger. And you can't shoot a male in the tail like a quail. Oh, you can't get a man with a gun.
The early days of live television on Channel 15, right after this. During WVEC's first years on the air, many hours of the day were filled with programs featuring local personalities and entertainers, produced live in WVEC's studios. By 1955, 65% of American families owned a television set. A 700% increase in 5 years. It wasn't long before the management of WVEC realized the power of the new medium. They also realized their responsibility to the community.
We gave to the educational system of Norfolk, and it later became Norfolk Hampton, time every day, Monday through Friday, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, for the use of educational and instructional programming.
We taught conversational Spanish, geometry, and science, and all those were live. We did 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon.
Norfolk and then Hampton picked the best teachers they could find to do on-air teaching and instruction. And the schools were equipped with TV sets to pick them up.
Dave Whitener was a director in the Norfolk studio on 21st Street.
We also did 2 college courses, and then Bill Whitehurst was Dean of Men at ODU, and he came in and taught a world geography class.
I taught the course for 30 minutes, a couple of nights a week. It was a straight lecture, of course, because there was no classroom audience.
He had a big bin clock he set on the desk because he could not take time signals from the cameraman. So in order to know how much time he had left in his half-hour program, he had a big bin clock.
Well, the fellows who were the cameraman one night decided to set the alarm about 3 minutes into my lecture, unbeknownst to me, and to see how I would react to it.
Well, we set the clock 10 minutes fast on him, and he thought he was wrapping the program up.
And suddenly the alarm went off. Well, my wife was at home watching me, and she said, suddenly I saw you duck out of the sight of the camera. I couldn't imagine what had happened. And she said, then you ducked back in again. And she said, I had no idea what had taken place. Well, of course, I was so mad I couldn't see straight at these fellows, but I couldn't say anything because we were still broadcasting.
And the TV set was fast becoming the place to get your daily dose of local news and information. Harry Doggett joined the Channel 15 staff in the late 50s.
The anchorman at the time that I came there was a fellow named Dick Kidney. Later, Dick left to go to another station, and that's when I started doing the news. There was a writer, Louis T. Jester, actually, who wrote the news for radio, and then he also wrote it for television, and we read it.
A small staff of reporters covered the local scene.
We did local news. We were at the city council meetings and things like that.
Television could bring you actual pictures of the day's events, but only if they happened before 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
We had to shoot 16mm film. We had an early deadline to get it in and get it processed. I think one of the differences, too, was that we reported the news. We made no comment about it.
The year 1960 marked the 350th anniversary of the settlement of the city of Hampton. Hampton is today the oldest continuous English-speaking settlement in America. The Project 60 unit of WVEC-TV presents The History of Hampton.
In 1819, construction
Tom
began
Chisholm felt that the television station should play a part in the growth of the Hampton Roads area. The city of Hampton's 350th anniversary was an opportunity to promote that growth.
And the war came and went, and the people who moved here launched the greatest period of growth in our history. One day, everybody in Hampton and Phoebus and all Elizabeth City County got together and said, we'll be one big city and see how well we can make out. And in 1952, we did it. And Hampton became what is known as a first-class city. But the growing didn't stop there. True, we have farms in our city and superhighways mile after mile. And it looks like we're never going to get done paving and repaving streets. But we have new industries. We manufacture brassware and electronic instruments. We shuck oysters, and we pick crabs, and we still gather them and bring them in. And our people build ships for modern men of the sea.
For several years, there were only 2 television stations on the air in southeast Virginia.
There was one VHF station already on the air, so we were competing against them, which wasn't too bad, until 1957.
A second VHF station, Channel 10, went on the air. Network agreements allowed the new station to broadcast NBC programs not aired by WVEC.
So we were running, get this, NBC programming daytime and ABC programming nighttime, and Wavy was doing the opposite.
Channel 10 could be picked up by all TV sets, offering a clear signal and relief from the nuisance of trying to watch a UHF broadcast.
And there was a little small piece of equipment that went into that converter, And that blooming thing kept burning out all the time. I mean, it might last 2 hours, it might last 6 hours, it might last 30 days. And so those of us with a television station used to walk around with those things in our coat pocket. And somebody would say, well, I was watching your television station, and then I had trouble and I couldn't, and before they said anything else, we'd reach in our pocket, pull this little thing out, give it to them, say, take that home, and we'd tell them where to put it in our converter. It was easy to plug in, and you'll get us again. That was the early days of television.
With 2 other television stations to choose from, viewers and advertisers turned away from WVEC.
The pre-war Channel 3 was on, Channel 10 was on, and we were now a UHF Channel 15.
Some action needed to be taken for WVEC to stay in business. The FCC had assigned a 3rd VHF frequency, Channel 12, to Hampton Roads. But it couldn't be used because it was too close to a station already on the air in Richmond.
Channel 13 was allocated to Washington, New Bern, North Carolina. And Tom went down there and in a wonderful way was able to convince them to take out Channel 12 for their 13, which we could use in this market.
Finally, the plan to move the allocation of a 3rd VHF channel to the Hampton Roads area was approved. A new studio and transmitter were built on 3rd Street in Norfolk. The NBC network took the opportunity to affiliate with WAVY. WVEC then reached an agreement with ABC, the American Broadcasting Company. On Friday, November 13th, 1959, WVEC television broadcast for the first time on VHF Channel 13. We'll drop in on Bungles the Clown when our look back at WVEC's first 40 years continues. If you were a kid in Hampton Roads in the 60s, then you know Bungles the Clown. This program aired for 13 years on WVEC-TV, beginning on the day the station switched to Channel 13.
Actually, the first Bungles was Henry Aldridge. Henry is still in the area.
Jerry Sanford was an announcer at WVEC Radio during the winter of 1959.
North, I believe it was Michigan or something like that. And he went home during Christmas, during the December of 1959. And then all of a sudden he called and said, hey, I'm in a snowstorm and I can't get back. And of course that was in the days of live television. We had nothing else that we could use as a substitute for the show. So Tom said, put on the suit and do the show.
So Jerry went in, put the grease paint on, got him a costume and went on the air and was so good at it that when the guy got back a week later, he didn't have a job.
This is sort of the way we evolved into the Bungle Show, and from there on, it's history.
Hi, gang! How did you like that? I was really stretching for that one, huh? Yes, sir, when it comes to jokes, I stretch for those, too.
Children took to the new Bungles immediately. One thing they loved was the special greeting they'd get from their favorite TV clown. One of those kids was Bob Saget, now the star of the ABC comedy Full House.
I used to come home from school. I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, and I'm very, very proud of that, actually. And Bungles had that long tie all the way down to his knees, and he used to do this wave, which I think was inherited later by one of Spock's friends. I'm not sure, but I just loved that guy, and all I remember is coming home, getting a case of Yoo-Hoo, sitting there just drinking up and watching Bungles the Clown.
Boys and girls, being Tuesday, I think it's time for a Bungles wave or two, and here we go with a wave and a double and going out to Vern Williams.
Something. We had to have a name for this wave. And I got so tickled because the boss at that time, the boss was our director, and he was Lindsay Tucker. We had a little session, and we were sitting around trying to come up with a name for the Bungles wave. And Lindsay said, I've got it. And I just knew he did. I knew he had something that would be monumental. He said, let's call it the Bungles Wave. And I thought, the Bungles Wave, that is the simplest thing I have ever heard of.
And here's one for John Alford. Nice to see you, John. A big hi for Glenn Decker. And one for Bonnie and Kenneth Snipes.
One of the things children loved about the show was the collection of wacky characters that would appear with Bungles. These were played by station employees, often on the spur of the moment.
There was a fellow at a station who was an announcer, and he used to, for fun, he'd do this gargling type of thing like he was a goldfish. And I thought, well, we ought to use him on the show. So we came up with Gordon Goldfish.
I don't think I'll even talk to you. I think I'll just drop you a line.
You don't think you can hook me on your humor? To catch a fish, you need 3 ingredients. You've got the hook and the line.
Yes.
You qualify for the third.
I need 3 things, huh? A hook and a line? And you say I qualify for the third? Well, what in the world is the third?
Like I said,
yes.
All you need is a hook.
Yes.
And a stinker.
The first character we had was performed by Frank Van. See, Bungles had this long tie, and we thought how great it would be if we had somebody who was always trying to steal his tie. So Frank Van comes up with this mask like the Lone Ranger and an old felt hat and an old overcoat, and we just took all these awful-looking ties, probably off the rack at home, and just pinned them all over him. And so he would sneak around and try to steal the tie. And that probably was one of the most acceptable and memorable characters we had, the necktie thief.
The Bungles Show went off the air in 1973.
So until then, with a great big grin, I'll say bye, gang. See you tomorrow.
We had fun, and as long as we could have fun, we thought the audience would enjoy it as well. And from the loyal fans that still seem to be around, apparently it worked.
November 22nd, 1963. Almost everyone old enough to remember can tell you where he or she was when the news came that President Kennedy had been killed.
Something has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill.
They'll also tell you that for the next 3.5 days, they left their TV sets on, watching the tragedy of the century unfold. Americans were beginning to turn to broadcast journalists as their first choice for news. At WVEC, station owner Tom Chisman realized the importance of news, but he was also sensitive to those viewers who did not want to watch around-the-clock coverage.
Saturday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, Tom Chisman called me at home and said, how do you feel about watching all this on the air? And I says, I'm depressed. He says, so am I. He said, I got an idea.
Believing that many viewers were feeling the same way he was, Chisman's idea was to air upbeat movies instead of the network coverage of the assassination.
We told the viewer that the following program would not be seen and that we were going to offer alternate program. However, if you want to watch the program, go watch it because it was going to be seen on Channel 3 and Channel 10.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Offering alternative programming when all 3 networks were covering the same story was not an easy decision. After all, many times these were world-changing events.
We did not capitalize on it commercially. We ran public service announcements. We did not sell the time. We just wanted to give the viewer something else.
Feature film. Stacks and stacks of it. We've got enough film in our, you should excuse the expression, film vaults, to keep us going for a couple of years. But
Channel 13 continued to offer alternative viewing to across-the-board news coverage until independent stations went on the air in Hampton Roads. With programs available to the viewer on channels 27 or 33, network news was broadcast on WVEC whenever provided by ABC.
John Miller, News Scene Richmond. Brad Face, News Scene Norfolk. Ron Leverton, News Scene Newport.
By 1970, news coverage of the Hampton Roads cities by WVEC reporters had greatly expanded.
News Scene Portsmouth.
We did the first 5:30 newscast. We'd all, at 6 o'clock, 5:30. Nobody's home at that time,
From Tidewater,
Channel 13 presents...
To meet the demands of viewers, WVEC provided longer newscasts, a greater number of newscasts, and increased the reporting staff. John Miller came to Channel 13 just out of college to work as a reporter in 1971.
The first assignment they sent me out on was a rally against busing at the Norfolk Federal Courthouse. And I was so new in the area that the picture on the front page of the Virginian Pilot featured me because they thought that I was one of the protesters rather than a reporter, and I was standing in the midst of the crowd.
Miller and the other reporters were given small silent film cameras to photograph the stories they were covering.
And if it was really a big story, there were two photographers who had cameras that had the capability of sound. And if it was a really big story, then you got to call for one of the real photographers, and they would come out with this giant old sound camera and do the interviews.
The Virginia Litter Control Act also contains an educational
The news staff was
program
encouraged to develop in-depth programs on issues affecting Hampton Roads.
Once a month in the award-winning program, Second Look, news scene reporters look in depth at some of the most serious problems of the day. Crime, taxes, local government, just some of the subjects too important to be adequately covered in daily newscast are given a second look. This half-hour program was selected by the Virginia News Photographers Association as the best in show in their 1975 competition. Once a month in prime time, this news special examines the important issues facing Tidewater, issues that deserve a second look.
Advances in technology, such as communications satellites, opened up the world to TV news. People now expected that when something big happened, they would see it on television almost instantly.
Step off the limb now. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
When you take a lot of weapons out of action, you take a lot of enemy forces out of action, and it follows that some people at least don't get killed. This is Jim Kincaid, ABC News in the Iron Triangle.
The local news on Channel 13 gained a world of experience when ABC network reporter Jim Kincaid signed on as anchorman.
There was a search going on by Tom Chisman for a permanent anchor, and I happened to be fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time. It appeared to me that it was just about the ideal kind of situation for me. It was within easy reach of the farm that we had already bought in Central Virginia. And it also had the qualities that I was looking for, kind of a hometown atmosphere, a good place to raise my daughter.
The nightly news featured Joe Folks Weather, sportscaster Brad Face, and a growing team of reporters with the Hampton Roads cities as their beat.
13 news reporters are truly professional, not only in broadcasting, but professional in their specialty. From politics to police, from Norfolk City Hall to Poquoson City Hall. We take advantage of each reporter's expertise to keep our viewers up to date on the changing world around them.
By the end of the 70s, television was firmly established as the leading source for news and information. At television stations like WVEC, the nightly newscast became the most important local program that the station produced. Coming up, more memories of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Live programs for children were a mainstay of the afternoon rundown on Channel 13, as they were on TV stations all around the country. Every city had its TV clown, its cowboy or fireman, and its romper room teacher. Connie Hindmarsh, Miss Connie, at first had no plans to become a television teacher.
I had two children that were never going to be plopped in front of a TV set I thought that was horrible. And my next-door neighbor said, Con, you ought to turn on this show. This girl is so cute. Miss Mary has the best show for children. So I sat down and I watched Romper Room with my two girls, my two little girls. And the show was good. It was very good.
Romper Room was the first TV kindergarten, with scripts and content supplied from a national center, but always produced live in a local TV studio with a local TV teacher.
The third day I watched it, they had an advertisement on. It was a call for people to audition to replace Miss Mary.
After auditioning many young women, the station selected Connie to take over the daily video classroom.
I had a degree in education. Also, I had spent quite a few years as an actress. They needed someone that could verbalize, could speak, could tell a story without the aid of a script.
For many preschool children in the 60s, Miss Connie was their first teacher, their first experience with learning.
It is amazing to me how popular the show was. I have people coming up to me frequently, at least every week, and they tell me, they recognize me, they thank me for the happiness that I brought them or their children.
It's time for Sandy's Circus! Ho!
Shortly after the Bungles show went off the air in 1973, another TV clown stepped into the center ring. Sandy was played by Rick Clark on Sandy's Circus.
Well, I went on the air as Sandy the Clown August 22nd, 1973. And I was on as Sandy till 1980.
Good morning, boys and girls. Oh, it's so nice to have you with us today. It's very nice to see you out there in TV land. And my name is Sandy the Clown, and these are my very special friends.
We also had children on the show. Brownie troops and Girl Scout troops and Boy Scout. Bungles rarely had children on the show. We did our show surrounded with a kids' audience on risers.
But most important, you're joining us, so that's special, and we thank you. And we thank our studio guests, who are from Virginia Beach, and they are the High Steppers. A nice round of applause for yourselves, girls. You may clap for yourselves. You want to hold your sign up? Hold your sign up, please.
The bewitching hour is near. Time for mere mortals, such as you and I, to throw off the shackles of reality.
Another tradition of local television is the late-night horror movie host. When he wasn't smiling as Bungles the Clown, Jerry Sanford was scowling as Ronald the Ghoul.
We had to create this character who was supposedly frightening. Well, to me, I didn't think we could be anywhere as frightening as the movies. So I said, well, let's be funny. And so we spoofed the whole thing. What we would do is take the film and we would preview it, and we'd try to find a spot that would be logical to break in. And then we would try to come up with something that was funny about what they were doing.
The spirits are calling for you. It's too late. You can't turn back. It's too late. You're already a part of the strange and forsaken world of shock.
Several years later, late-night horror movies returned to Channel 13, and a new character was needed to host the program.
I titled the show Chamber Theater, and I thought the character could be called the Keeper of the Chamber, rather than have a specific name.
Welcome to my chamber. Why, I'm the keeper, of course, and you know who you are. That's what I call a house of wax.
As the 70s drew to a close, Tom Chisman began to consider a plan to find a broadcast group to buy WVEC television.
We were one of the few left that was still locally owned, locally operated, and run.
We just decided at the time that it was right. It was the right time to sell, and Tom negotiated the sale, and we sold.
It was a big surprise. Tom Chisman started this station when it was Channel 15, 40 years ago, and that was his life to a great extent. And we had always assumed that he would stay here forever, or if he didn't, then someone in the Chisman family would take it over, and it would be a family-run entity.
Chisman was looking for a company that could provide security for station employees and promise commitment to the Hampton Roads community.
Tom Chisman had an amazing theory about how to run a business. His theory was that you started out with good people. And if you had good people, then you'd have a good product. And if you had a good product, then you'd have sales. And if you had sales, you'd have a profit. But it all started with good people.
The board of directors sold WVEC television to Corinthian Broadcasting, a division of the Dun & Bradstreet Corporation. The sale became final on April 1st, 1980. Tom Chisman would stay on as general manager. Corporate ownership meant big changes for Channel 13. New equipment, renovated buildings, and new local programs.
I was called to come over to produce some programs because WVEC had been purchased by Corinthian Broadcasting, which was a subsidiary of Dun & Bradstreet, and they had a whole different set of goals, they wanted a whole new face for the television station. So
Sherry Brennan is now Community Affairs Director at Channel 13.
Programming, and my job was to create 7 new programs that they wanted to have on the air. But back in the early 80s, we did a show called Young Edition, which was a news program for kids. We had 3 child anchors. They were, I guess, junior high age. And the kids came in and they practiced their copy. They introduced stories, and the news stories were things about animals and things that were of interest to kids. And it was a really neat little show. And of course, stayed on the air until we kind of ran out of kids and producers and all that sort of thing that happened in TV. But it was a good program.
One new program was a live feature magazine, Tidewater Evening. The hosts, Joe Flanagan and Catherine Barrett, are still well known in Hampton Roads for their feature reporting on 13 News. Three years after acquiring WVEC, Dun & Bradstreet decided to get out of the broadcasting business. The Corinthian television stations were sold to the A.H. Belo Corporation of Dallas, Texas. At that time, Tom Chisman retired from actively running Channel 13.
He knew that television would be the greatest thing in the history of this community. He believed that the Hampton Roads area was a great and wonderful place to live. Often called it one of the best kept secrets on the East Coast. And he said it was because it offered so much, of course, with the ports and the water and all of that. But also, he really felt like there was just a real decency about the area and people.
He set the standard for broadcasters that we now enjoy today. And I credit this man with a lot of what we see today on all the stations as a result of his influence.
WVEC is now a part of the A.H. Belo Corporation of Dallas, Texas, a company with a 150-year history of journalistic excellence. Channel 13's commitment to quality news broadcasting is stronger than ever before.
We are more likely to present people that the viewers know and can rely upon, trying to give them straight talk about what's happening in their community. I think the reason you see VEC the way it is today, with serious people trying to do serious work, is that it's the station's tradition, but it's also the tradition of the company that owns it.
We're able to do things now that were still science fiction when I went to work here. To do a live switch to some very, very remote area, to be on the scene of a story and reporting it live within minutes of the time that it occurs. Those were not possible in 1978.
Involvement in the community is stronger than ever before, too. For example, since 1985, the Angel Tree Project has helped the Salvation Army collect clothing for children at Christmas.
Last year, we collected about 60,000 articles of clothing, and there was not a child who went through the Christmas program at the Salvation Army who did not walk out with an entire set of clothing. All of these clothes were provided piece by piece by the people in Hampton Roads.
WVEC is making a commitment to education with the most expansive community project we have ever launched, School Spirit.
And now, in 1993, Channel 13 is embarking on a new community project, one with roots in the educational broadcasts the station pioneered in the 50s.
This television event is unlike anything the Hampton Roads community has ever seen. School Spirit begins bringing core knowledge to Hampton Roads with the introduction
There are a lot of really decent, interested citizens who work at this television station. So it's wonderful to see the kinds of things that can evolve when you have a group of people like that working together, trying to make things better through television.
WVEC's investment in news broadcasting and community projects reflects the station's belief that free over-the-air television is a service that will be needed for the next 40 years.
Spirit of Hampton Roads, yeah, the spirit still remains.
My own part in the history of WVEC-TV's 40 years didn't begin until 15 years ago. But I did get my own start in broadcasting that same year in Russellville, Arkansas, at a small radio station. So, growing up in broadcasting, I can appreciate the changes that Channel 13 has seen. Technological changes, to be sure, but also social changes, political changes. Even the landscape around us has changed constantly through the years. Some changes for the better, some, well, let's not go into that. It's a birthday party. One of the things that attracted me to WVEC-TV back in 1978 was the importance Tom Chisman placed on news. Since that's what I do for a living, that impressed me. It's been a great pleasure over the years to see that commitment grow and our ability to do the job better and better, given first rank among Channel 13 priorities. Combine all that with the opportunity to work with some of the finest and most talented people on the planet in all our departments, and the chance to serve a lively and progressive yet friendly community, well, not too many kids from the hills of Arkansas get that lucky. I wish I could name all the names that have become important to me here, but I can't. I can say thanks. You know who you are. It's been a rough ride sometimes, but on the whole, a wonderful trip, and I'd make it again. That's tonight's note. Stand by now for another 4 decades.